Hey, before we begin this video, I want to thank Growling Sidewinder for use of his footage later on in this video. Please be sure to check out his page on YouTube, the link will be in the description. When we last left off with the lineage of the MiG fighters, we left you all with the story of the MiG-23 Flogger, the ill-fated replacement for the MiG-21 Fishbed. We spoke about how, despite being a much better aircraft than the MiG-21 in pretty much every category, it was not enough of an advancement against the best aircraft in the West to be the replacement the Soviet Union and her client states needed for the MiG-21. While it had greater range, speed, avionics, radar, and improved missile capacity than the MiG-21, it was only marginally better than the aircraft it was designed to fight against, specifically the F-4 Phantom. The other big problem was the reaction the West had to the introduction of the MiG-25 Foxbat. The US and NATO were faced with a dilemma after seeing the MiG-25 in satellite photos and then seeing the high-speed performance of the aircraft. This reaction caused a shift in thinking for a new aircraft being designed, which would later become the F-15 Eagle. The US Navy had also introduced a brand new fighter in the form of the F-14. Not only was the F-14 also a variable geometry wing design aircraft, but it was also superior to the MiG-23. It also had a better radar and could fire the extremely long-range AIM-54 Phoenix missile. The AIM-54, designed and built in the 1960s, gave the F-14 a range advantage that Soviet aircraft could not match until the 1990s, with the introduction of the R-77, known as the AA-12 Adder, by NATO, and the R-37, known as the AA-13 Axehead. But the Soviets were used to being a little behind the West in terms of aircraft design. However, this lag behind was much more pronounced than what the MiG-21 had against the likes of the F-4 Phantom. But the MiG-23's failures stacked up quickly. Over a dozen Syrian MiG-23s were shot down by Israeli F-15s and F-16s over the course of the Arab-Israeli wars. Iraqi MiG-23 fighters also fared even worse against Iran during the Iran-Iraq War, reportedly suffering upwards of 50 losses against Iranian F-14s, F-5s, and F-4s. Libyan MiG-23s were routinely outperformed by Egyptian MiG-21 jet fighters during the Libyan-Egyptian War, and two of these fighters were destroyed by two US F-14 Tomcats during the 1989 Tobruk skirmish. So despite very early success against Israeli F-4 Phantoms, it quickly became a major failure for the Soviet Union, especially since F-4s, F-5s, and even MiG-21s armed with better missiles could get the better of the fighter. As this drama was playing out, the Soviets had already begun designing their newest air superiority fighter. With the Soviets aware that the Americans were creating a light fighter to complement the F-15, the Soviets copied the move with their own two-aircraft approach. One jet fighter would be heavier and designed for longer-range missions against soft targets like Western AWACS, command and control aircraft, and in-air refueling tankers. This would go on to become the Flanker family of aircraft, with the first being the Su-27. The lighter counterpart, and the one most likely to replace the MiG-23 and MiG-21, would become the MiG-29 Fulcrum. The MiG-29 was radically different from both the MiG-21 and MiG-23. The twin-engine, twin-tail fighter was designed to climb faster and pull harder Gs in combat. The Fulcrum also had one additional hardpoint and had a 30mm cannon, as opposed to the 23mm cannon mounted in the MiG-23. It was also designed to carry the R-73, known as the AA-11 Archer, by NATO, a missile with such great range performance that it spurred the West to create the AIM-9X, the Advanced Short-Range Air-to-Air Missile, and the Iris-T to match the capabilities of the R-73. Equipped with the R-73 and a helmet-mounted display system, the MiG-23 is one of the toughest aircraft in the world to deal with in a dogfight.
Right around here, we're getting to the merge. There we go, merge. and he should absolutely decimate me, but let's just see. Alright, there he is. We're one circle, and he's got a Fox 2 off. Shit! Alright, last time didn't work out, but this time for sure I got him. Oh shit, no wait. No. God damn it.
In a one-on-one dogfight, an R-73 equipped MiG-29 is a very dangerous opponent, and with how fast the two Klimov RD-33 engines can get a fulcrum to altitude and be in the fight, it is one to take seriously. And that is where the list of great achievements for the MiG-29 start to end. For while the MiG-29 was designed so well for the dogfight that the Soviets neglected to provide the aircraft a better radar or better missiles for the beyond visual range fight that was becoming more important in the skies around the world. Missiles like the AIM-7 Sparrow were being optimized for longer range intercepts to defeat the all-aspect capabilities of missiles like the R-73, thus negating their potential power before they could come into range of the foe. The MiG-29, designed to be lighter than even the MiG-23 from the start, also meant that it had a much shorter combat range than that of the Flogger, from 810 nautical miles down to 490 nautical miles. And while yes, the F-16 does have a smaller combat range than that of the MiG-29, it has multiple advantages over the MiG. For starters, the F-16 has 9 available hardpoints, 2 more than the MiG-29. The F-16 was also designed from the onset to have in-air refueling capability, which further increases the effective combat range of the F-16 so long as enough tankers are available from takeoff to the combat zone. The F-16 was also designed from the onset to utilize digital fly-by-wire controls and a better radar than that of the Fulcrum. The MiG-29's shorter combat range and lack of effective beyond visual range missiles put the Fulcrum at an extreme disadvantage against the F-15, which had the same amount of hardpoints, G capabilities, and a longer range than that of the F-16. The MiG does have similar capabilities to the F-18 and has better close-range capabilities over the F-14. But if any of these aircraft were to employ beyond visual range weapons, the advantage drastically shifts over to the longer-range capable aircraft. Couple this to not having in-air refueling capability in the earlier models, and you have a recipe for disaster. For while the MiG-29 is very good at what it was designed to do, any aggressor with better beyond visual range capabilities will almost by default be able to defeat the MiG-29. The MiG-29 is also very expensive compared to the MiG-23 and the MiG-21, at over $20 million per plane. By comparison, a MiG-23 may cost around $6 million. In combat, these design flaws, along with the cost of the aircraft, proved fatal. During the Ethiopian-Eritrean War, 6 Eritrean MiG-29s were downed by Ethiopian Su-27s. During the NATO intervention in Kosovo, a further 6 MiG-29s were shot down, 3 of which were downed by F-15s and 2 more downed by F-16s. In Operation Desert Storm, a further 5 MiG-29s were shot down by F-15s, and another 4 Syrian MiG-29s were shot down by Israeli F-15s over the years. Now, I bet many of you want to bring up the myth of the Ghost of Kyiv, the Ukrainian MiG-29 pilot that shot down up to 6 Russian aircraft during the first days of the Russian invasion, including 2 possible kills of Russian Su-35 super flankers in the mix. While it appears that this whole scenario is actually that of a myth, the combat reported would be right in the MiG-29's advantage from the start. These were all close-range ambushes, something the MiG-29 would excel at, especially if armed with the R-73. This advantage was quickly negated once Russian pilots began flying higher altitude missions and began relying more on beyond visual range missiles that used targeting Russian AWACS aircraft flying safely over Russian and Belarusian airspace. And yes, the MiG-29 has most likely been converted to employ the AGM-88 HARM and the American JDAM. These were battlefield improvements that required a great deal of MacGyvering to actually work. Despite these recent successes, there is little else that can save the MiG-29 from being a failure. To further showcase this point, The Iranian Air Force, which has 40 MiG-29s bought since 1991, still continue to regularly fly their much older F-4 Phantoms, F-5 Tigers, and F-14 Tomcats. Other countries that bought MiG-29s are also more apt to give away their MiG-29s to Ukraine in exchange for F-16s or F-35s. And in Ukraine as well, the calls for the F-16 and the F-A-18, with their more capable beyond visual range engagement capabilities, are nothing more than the sun setting on this once promising fighter. Even more telling is how many countries that once proudly bought each new iteration of the MiG fighter to be released have switched over to the much more capable variants of the Su-27 flanker, the longer-range counterpart to the Soviet 1-2 punch approach to aerial combat in the 1980s. With only some sales of the naval variant MiG-29K, it is clear now that the MiG-29 will go down as a failure. Coming up on the next video, the sinking of the Moskva and the state of the Russian Navy. Combat ineffective because marching is tough.